It drops without warning 2 minutes ago. A palace announcement lands like a controlled explosion. Not celebratory, not warm, just precise language that feels defensive. A document signed by the king, described as emergency authority, transferred to Catherine effective immediately. In royal life, immediate changes never mean convenience, they mean containment. Aides go quiet. Calendars lock. Phones stop being used. Because if the palace is moving power this fast, it's not about tradition, it's about survival. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Now watch what happens in the first hour. Because the truth is never in the headline, it's in the sudden, disciplined silence that follows. Schedules don't adjust, they wipe clean. Meetings don't reschedule, they vanish. A soft phrase like privacy measures spreads through the offices like a code word, and suddenly doors that used to open with a nod now require approvals, escorts, and explanations that arrive too late to matter. Communications tighten across royal staff the way a fist closes. Fewer calls, fewer texts, fewer names spoken aloud. Everyone is careful, not because they're polite, but because they're afraid of being the person who says the wrong thing at the wrong time and becomes part of the story. Because in this world, emergency is not a description, it's choreography. It is the palace's way of moving fast without looking frantic, of rearranging power while pretending it's just procedure. The language is always clean, always calm, always sterile, as if panic can be scrubbed out by formatting. But you can feel the urgency behind it, the kind that doesn't bang pots and shout, it whispers. Contain it, control it, seal it. And when the king signs something that shifts authority to Catherine, the meaning isn't just political. It's personal. It says the institution has identified a pressure point and decided she is now part of the system's emergency response, whether she asked for that weight or not. Catherine has always been framed as the monarchy's symbol of stability, the steady smile, the composed presence, the reassuring figure the public can project their trust onto. But stability in a royal family isn't a gift, it's a job. And jobs like this come with invisible costs, exhaustion that must never show, worry that must never leak, and a constant awareness that the palace loves you most when you're useful. Publicly, she is calm. Privately, she has been carrying pressures that no statement will ever admit, because admitting them would mean admitting the crown is not as unbreakable as it pretends to be. That's why the announcement feels defensive. It doesn't read like celebration, it reads like risk management. And risk management always creates winners, losers, and scapegoats. When power moves suddenly, someone gains access. Someone loses influence. Someone gets pushed closer to the cameras, and someone gets pushed into the shadows. That's the unspoken rule. If Catherine is being given emergency authority, the palace isn't simply empowering her, it's repositioning her. It's deciding what she will be allowed to represent, what she will be permitted to know, and how her image will be used to stabilize whatever is shaking behind closed doors. Because when the crown is threatened, it doesn't just defend itself with guards and gates. It defends itself with narratives. Then the whisper starts, the kind that doesn't come from tabloids first, but from the people who carry folders and never make eye contact in hallways. They say the document wasn't drafted today. They say it existed weeks ago, written as a contingency and buried like a spare key under a stone nobody was supposed to lift. They say it was revised, rehearsed, and held back until something happened, or almost happened, and the palace decided it could no longer wait. And that changes everything, because it means today isn't the beginning. Today is the moment the palace admits the future it feared is no longer hypothetical. And the cruelest detail, the one that makes this feel less like governance and more like betrayal, is that Catherine hears it last, the way the public hears it, through the same controlled language and careful distance. No private warning that respects her as a person, no preparation that acknowledges her as family. Just a shift in authority announced like a weather alert, as if her life is a system to be recalibrated. In that instant, she doesn't just feel the weight of the crown, she feels the crown moving around her, tightening, adjusting, protecting itself first. And once you realize this wasn't written today, the question becomes terrifying: what did the palace see coming that forced it to rewrite Catherine's role in real time? Emergency powers sound like protection until you understand they're the palace's language of control. They decide who can authorize security, who gets briefed, and who is kept in the dark for stability. This isn't etiquette. It's access, visibility, narrative. And the terrifying shift is what it implies. Catherine isn't being treated as family. She's being treated as infrastructure, something the monarchy can install, reinforce, and sacrifice if the foundation starts to crack. Because emergency authority is not a ceremonial label. It is power in its most practical form: who stands close, who enters rooms, who approves statements, who signs off on movements, who controls the story before it becomes a scandal. The palace doesn't have to announce a coup when it can perform one in paperwork. A minor procedural adjustment can redraw the hierarchy without ever admitting it has changed, because the public hears protocol and thinks manners, while the institution hears protocol and thinks machinery. And whenever anyone questions it, the palace has the perfect shield: it's just procedure. 3 words that turn moral accountability into a technicality, as if harm can be excused by formatting. That is how Catherine becomes the future bodyguarded by paperwork, protected and restricted at the same time, wrapped in policies that claim to keep her safe while quietly narrowing her freedom. On the surface, the transfer sounds like empowerment. Underneath, it's a system of gates, a chain of approvals, a narrowing tunnel where every decision passes through hands she did not choose. And then comes the twist, the detail that doesn't belong in public language but always belongs in palace reality, a quiet restriction buried in the authority itself, changing who can brief her, what she can be told, and how quickly information can reach her when it matters most. Not a loud ban that sparks questions, a silent reroute that ensures Catherine receives a curated version of truth, delayed just long enough to keep her compliant. From the outside, she looks serene, perfect posture, practiced warmth, unshakable composure. But inside, she's doing what royals learn young: survive pressure without revealing fear. This transfer of power doesn't just tighten rules. It tightens oxygen. It tells her she is both protected and contained, praised as essential while treated as potentially dangerous. And that contradiction is where the dread lives. Because Catherine understands the cruel arithmetic of monarchy, the more the institution protects you, the less you're allowed to be human. Public calm becomes a uniform. Private exhaustion becomes a secret. Even her schedule starts feeling like a script written by someone else, with her name placed on top like a signature she never signed. She hates becoming a battlefield for other people's agendas, hates the way every smile can be interpreted as loyalty, every silence as consent. She feels the inner conflict sharpening duty pulling her toward obedience, self-preservation pulling her toward resistance, maternal instinct pulling her toward one simple need: certainty. Because a mother doesn't fear headlines first, she fears instability. And Catherine can sense something about this transfer is designed to test her, maybe even provoke her. A system tightened to the point that one frustrated moment, one incorrect response, one visible crack becomes proof she cannot be trusted with power. That's how traps work in palaces. They don't push you off a cliff. They build a narrow ledge and wait for you to slip. A confidant tries to warn her softly, the way people speak when walls might have ears. They'll call it care. It's control. Catherine nods like she understands, but the truth hits later, when she realizes care is being used as leverage, and her access to truth is being rationed like medicine. And then the final shock arrives through a channel that shouldn't exist anymore: an unauthorized note. No crest, no signature, just a sentence that burns through every reassuring phrase the palace has offered. You are not the only target. And once Catherine realizes she isn't the only target, the emergency transfer stops being personal, it becomes strategic. Because if there's a directive, the palace isn't preparing for celebration, it's preparing for a breach. William doesn't need a briefing to understand what's happening. He reads royal procedure the way generals read maps looking for choke points, escape routes, and who holds the keys. The palace calls it protecting Catherine. William hears the subtext, limiting her contact, shaping her exposure, controlling what she's allowed to know. And when the heir realizes the institution is rewriting his wife's boundaries without his consent, fear turns into something sharper: resolve. Because William lives two lives at once, and the emergency transfer forces them to collide. There is the dutiful heir who knows every tradition has a cost, who has been trained to absorb pressure without flinching, to nod at decisions even when they sting. And then there is the husband, the one who watches Catherine's world tighten and feels something animal rise beneath the discipline. Controlled rage. Not loud, not reckless, but focused. The kind that makes a man dangerous because he starts paying attention to details other people ignore. He interprets this transfer not as empowerment, but as a claim over Catherine's public meaning and her private access, over the story she is allowed to embody and the truth she is allowed to hear. That is the conflict the palace counts on. Comply and keep the illusion of unity, or challenge the machine and trigger retaliation disguised as stability. William has seen this trick before. He remembers moments when the palace smiled for the cameras while quietly rearranging loyalties behind closed doors, when family harmony became camouflage for control. He knows how the institution punishes dissent without calling it punishment, by starving you of information, isolating you through schedules, surrounding you with support that feels like surveillance. And yet the more he tries to accept the official explanation, the more the paperwork betrays it. The approval trail doesn't move cleanly through the channels it should. It routes through an unofficial chain, names appearing where they shouldn't, signatures landing too quickly, access granted and revoked with eerie precision. It's not chaos, it's choreography. So William does what heirs are never supposed to do. He starts collecting evidence. Quietly. Methodically. Drafts that don't match the final wording. Calendar edits that happened before the announcement. Access logs showing who was permitted to brief Catherine and who was suddenly blocked. Approval trails that curve away from the people who should have authority and toward the people who want it. Each document feels like a piece of a larger map, and the deeper he goes, the more he realizes the palace didn't simply respond to a crisis, it prepared for one. That's when an insider, someone close enough to know, scared enough to whisper, delivers a phrase that freezes William in place. This was ordered from above. And that's where the story turns. Because above doesn't just mean rank. It means power without accountability. It means decisions made in rooms William doesn't enter, by people who don't need to explain themselves to the heir they publicly praise. It means Catherine's new authority might be less about giving her control and more about making her responsible, so if the system fails, the blame has somewhere clean to land. And while William is tracing signatures, another machine starts turning, the one that doesn't leave paper cuts. The one that moves through rumor and timing and sources close to the palace. They call it the institution, but it's really a network: press handlers, advisors, donors, legal fixers, security chiefs, people who outlive monarchs by shaping reality before the public ever sees it. The moment the emergency transfer goes live, the shadow court doesn't ask what's fair. It asks what's controllable. Leaks begin, spin begins. Friendly journalists get context. Because if Catherine holds new authority, the palace wants one thing above all: control of the reason. The leaks are soft at first, like test balloons released into the sky. A carefully placed phrase here: exhaustion. A quiet suggestion there: strain. Just enough to introduce a frame, without making an accusation. Catherine becomes a storyline that can be shaped, fragile but brave, overwhelmed but supported, protected for her own good. And William, he becomes the second frame, the one waiting in the wings, volatile, emotional, destabilizing anything that makes his questions sound like aggression instead of devotion. That's how the Shadow Court survives every reign. It doesn't fight you head-on. It edits the public's instincts until they suspect you before they understand you. And then comes the twist no one wants to name out loud. Someone benefits if Catherine's influence is quietly reduced even while she is publicly empowered. A senior figure whose proximity to the king strengthens when Catherine's access narrows. A rival who doesn't need to defeat her, only to limit her. The emotional tension thickens because the king can feel it too, even if he won't say it plainly. He looks less like a ruler and more like a man being managed by the very machine he once enabled, watching family communication collapse into intermediaries, watching intimacy replaced by sealed briefings and carefully timed updates. It's a palace turning inward, not to protect its people, but to protect its structure. And then, as William tries to decide whether to expose what he's finding or swallow it for the sake of peace, a courtier whispers the next line like a threat disguised as pragmatism. If this goes wrong, we sacrifice her protector. And once sacrifice is discussed as strategy, William realizes the palace isn't protecting Catherine, it's preparing to survive her. And once ordered from above is whispered, the question becomes deadly: who exactly is above an heir when the palace decides to move? Camilla doesn't shout, she never has to. Her power lives in polite sentences that sound like concern while they tighten a noose. She praises Catherine publicly, offers support, insists the emergency transfer is for her well-being. But William hears the machinery beneath the softness. Because in a palace, the most dangerous weapon isn't cruelty, it's care used as leverage. And Camilla knows exactly how to make control look like compassion. She speaks in the language the public trusts: health, safety, stability, words that sound like love until you notice how efficiently they close doors. Protection, in Camilla's mouth, becomes a frame that can't be argued with. Because who challenges well-being without looking monstrous? That's the trick. She reframes the move as protection, not restriction. And suddenly Catherine's boundaries aren't being tightened, they're being supported. But William doesn't let the softness lull him. He presses with calm precision, like a barrister who knows the difference between reassurance and evasion. Who requested it? Who signed off? Who benefits? Why now? Each question is simple. Each answer is carefully shaped, not to inform him, but to manage him. And then the king caught between spouse and heir becomes the silent center of the storm. Love pulling one way, legitimacy pulling the other. Peace whispering, let it go, while truth insists, look closer. William watches his father's face and sees the cost of monarchy written in restraint. A man who must keep the institution upright, even when it bends his family out of shape. Camilla leans into that weakness with practiced grace, offering unity as if it's a gift, while preparing two narratives behind the scenes: family harmony if William complies, heir aggression if he doesn't. The palace always keeps a clean story ready. It's not paranoid, it's policy. Then comes the twist, delivered not as a threat, but as an implication. Camilla suggests there are files. Not gossip. Not rumors. Files. The kind that protect the monarchy, the kind that contain ugly truths, old compromises, quiet disasters that never reached daylight because someone kept the lid on tight enough. It's soft blackmail energy without the ugliness of blackmail words. She doesn't say, "I'll destroy you." She says, "I've kept us safe." And William feels the warning underneath: safety is conditional, and she wants him to remember who controls the conditions. For a brief moment, the confrontation turns emotionally raw, because he sees her humanity and her calculation braided together, not as a villain's mask, but as the survival instinct of someone who believes the crown must be preserved at any cost. Here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Emergency powers often arrive after a near catastrophe, an incident, a leak, a threat, a mistake that almost happened. William leaves the conversation with Camilla's concerns still ringing in his ears, and he follows the paper trail as if it might finally tell the truth no one will speak. What he finds isn't chaos, it's cleaning. Gaps that don't look accidental. Names removed, drafts rewritten, approvals rerouted. Chain of custody irregularities, edited logs, reassigned witnesses, missing timestamps like someone swept the floor before inviting him to inspect the room. And then the timing hits him. The emergency transfer aligns with a major public appearance, so perfectly it feels designed, not reactive. Too neat, too strategic, too intentional to be random. That's when he sees the real architecture. This isn't designed to protect Catherine from the public. It's designed to protect the palace from what Catherine might learn. A red page restriction buried in the authority itself quietly dictates who can brief her, what can be said, what must be withheld, and how truth is rationed like currency. The emotional gut punch is immediate. Catherine's ignorance isn't accidental, it's curated. And when William forces a private admission from the king, it's worse than denial. His father confesses he felt pulled by advisors he used to trust, guided by voices that promised stability while tightening control around the people William loves. So William prepares a counter-move with the cold clarity of someone who finally understands the battlefield: governance reform, access reform, an audit demand that forces daylight into the places the palace prefers to keep dim. He knows it will look like rebellion to those who profit from silence, but he also knows doing nothing is how the institution wins, by turning outrage into routine. Then the message arrives, short enough to be deniable and sharp enough to be unmistakable: stand down. And when the palace tells the heir to stand down, William understands the enemy isn't outside the gates, it's inside the rulebook. Because when someone says don't turn this into a war, it usually means they already started one quietly. William expects resistance from Camilla. He expects discomfort from the king. He does not expect the signature trail to lead to the person praised as the monarchy's guardian, the stability architect, the one credited for keeping everything afloat. And that's the darkest truth. Because if the protector is writing the rules that restrict Catherine, then protection isn't love, it's infrastructure. And infrastructure doesn't care who it crushes. The discovery doesn't arrive with drama. It arrives with numbers, initials, and clean little annotations that look harmless until you read them like a confession. The architect's fingerprints are everywhere, approvals that slide through faster than they should, edits that clarify language while quietly tightening control, and that repeated phrase that makes every alarm sound like routine: security standardization. It's a magician's misdirection in bureaucratic ink. The palace doesn't have to lie if it can rename the truth. And as William follows the trail, he sees the twist that explains the chaos around him. The architect benefits from keeping William and Camilla in conflict. Misdirection isn't a side effect, it's the strategy. While they glare at each other, the machine keeps moving, untouched and unquestioned, because everyone assumes the war is personal when it's actually structural. The king feels it like a delayed wound. The moment he recognizes the name behind the changes, something in him shifts, not anger first, but realization. A cold, humiliating understanding that his reign was managed, curated, controlled, that he wasn't steering the ship as much as he was being handed a wheel that only turned where the system allowed. William watches his father absorb that truth and sees the pain underneath the dignity. A man who thought he chose stability, now realizing stability chose him and then used him. And suddenly William's choice becomes brutal in its simplicity. Peace now or integrity later. Silence keeps the family intact in public, keeps Catherine safe in the short term, keeps the monarchy looking smooth. But silence also confirms the cage, and cages don't stop closing once they learn you'll accept them. That's when an ally steps in, someone sharp enough to read the palace like a codebook and brave enough to say what everyone else is afraid to admit. Ilara doesn't beg, she warns. If you wait, you lose. Because waiting is how palaces win, they stretch time until outrage becomes routine, until questions lose their edge, until the truth becomes too old to shock. William starts preparing a final reveal, not as a tantrum, not as revenge, but as a precision strike proof packaged for maximum impact, timed to the moment the palace can't swallow it quietly. Draft comparisons. Approval chains, access restrictions, the exact language where care becomes control. He builds it like a dossier because the only way to fight a system built on procedure is to trap it in its own paperwork. The architect doesn't beg him to stop. That's what makes them terrifying. They speak to him the way adults speak to children near a ledge, calm, patient, as if the danger is obvious and the only question is whether he's foolish enough to step forward. If you expose this, you destabilize everything. It sounds like a warning, but it lands like a threat, because now destabilize isn't a risk, it's a hostage note. Stability is being held over William's head like a weapon. The palace is saying, choose truth and you will be blamed for the collapse. Choose silence and you will be rewarded with peace that isn't real. By the end, nobody walks away clean, not the king, not Camilla, not even William. Because emergency powers don't just organize life in a palace, they decide who is protected, who is controlled, and who becomes expendable when fear rises. William faces the final decision: keep it necessary, or expose what it's really doing to Catherine, even if it fractures the monarchy's image forever. The crown doesn't reward the right choice. It rewards the surviving one. When William finally confronts the stability architect, it isn't a shadowy villain across a dark table. It's someone respected, composed, terrifyingly calm, someone who speaks of duty the way a surgeon speaks of cutting. Necessary, clean, unemotional. The king, cornered by what he now knows, admits the darkest rule out loud: we survive by controlling stories. Camilla's fate becomes impossible to read, maybe weakened by exposure, maybe repositioned into a quieter power, maybe quietly triumphant, because survival has always been her skill. And Catherine's future becomes the hardest truth of all. Safer, yes, but shaped by restrictions she didn't choose, by gatekeepers she never appointed, by a version of stability that comes at the cost of her agency. William forces reforms that look boring until you understand they are revolutionary. Audit authority that can't be blocked, calendar control that can't be hijacked, access reforms that break the red page silence, briefing transparency that puts truth back within reach. And just when the palace tries to stitch the narrative closed, 4 leaked words appear like a crack in polished stone. Not the last change. The public devours it because it feels like prophecy, like confession, like threat. And the final sting isn't what people think happened, it's what nobody explains, what nobody dares to clarify, what the palace pretends is too complex to discuss. Did you notice what wasn't explained? And if you think this was the end, look closer, because palaces don't bury secrets, they plant them, waiting for the next generation to inherit the roots. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.